Well, hello, um, everyone, anybody. Irene, how are you today? Um, the, the topic is your past does not define your future, and they can't control your present, even with the brain-computer interface technology and their deep fakes and their coercion. Um, these groups are um, ending people's lives in the same manner over and over, which is the definition of a serial killer. But they're a big group of people doing it by protecting each other. The group will lie for the whole. No matter what. And through coercion, they rally other people to attack and assault targeted individuals. Now, the main thing is, yeah, they have their scripts and they have their actors, and pretty much across the board for targeted individuals, the progression is the same. Some of the stories are a little different, but for the most part, the similarities are too close to ignore. That they work a targeted individual in the same manner over and over. I guess it's through repetition that they feel like that they can get away with it. But for the most part, what we're talking about tonight is brain-computer interface technology. And as this conversation progresses, hopefully I'll have somebody up here on the panel to talk to, and it's a lot more interesting when it's just one boring asshole like me talking all by myself. When there's a little bit of different viewpoints, but for the most part, when we get started going here and have a conversation working, I'm going to go ahead and share the StreamYard link for hopefully coherent, non-racist, non-slimy scumbags coming in to talk, rather than to come in here and troll and say some racist bullshit or whatever. For whatever reason, they're going to come in here to peen bomb or whatever they want to try and do. We don't need that. And in other episodes, I've proven that's their game. They impersonate other people to enter your stream and then play their bullshit and then do whatever and defame someone's good name by just using their name or likeness or whatever, such as like my icon here, or a variation of my name, or some other person's name, not just me. Like you're saying, I'm nobody's master. I mean, I'm just another guy being fucked over by gang stalkers, just like you are. That's something I've noticed throughout the targeted individual community, that we're not special among each other. We're all the same in that respect. We're all being fucked over by this group of serial killer scumbags, and through what they call a soft kill method, which is slow kill, and they try to not leave a blueprint so that you can or any traces so that it's hard to prove what they're doing. But over the course of the last 4 years through research and gathering evidence. I mean, I haven't really put a dossier together of all the evidence that I've acquired about what they've done to me personally, such as the impersonation, the deep faking, the Facebook hacking, the mail tampering, the verbal assault 24/7 via V2K, the street theater. There's time for that later, but throughout episodes, I presented several different kinds of evidence that support what I'm talking about and what other targeted individuals is talking about. But for the most part, just my opinion here through my research and all the stuff that I've done, the idea is that it's a microwave technology. Well, that could be so in part, but for the most part, the dream manipulation is done through brain-computer interface. V2K is done through brain-computer interface on an acoustic level. The pain, the physical damage they do to your body can be done with acoustics, and the pain is done directly in your head. The nerve centers in your brain are what they're using to create pain for you mostly. And through acoustics, they like this video that Virginia was showing me today, that it was pretty much a joke video, but it would have been funnier had it not been true. That, you know, that the acoustic weapons that they're using can harm the body and the mind, and even though we all know as targets that this stuff is happening, the Gang Stalker community, the serial killer cult, try to enforce that we're all schizophrenic, or it's a problem with us, or we're crazy or whatever. That's their game, is to label you as crazy and a menace when you're not. They're the menaces. They're a group of people that are a menace to society. This is a worldwide epidemic, I guess, for lack of a better word. And hi Rose, how are you today? Nice to see you. And if you're a targeted individual, you see it. You know what's happening because you're the recipient of the attacks. So it's not like as a target, you don't know what's going on. And the other thing is the Gang Stalkers know exactly what's going on because they're the perpetrators of it. That's why we call them perps. Now, for the most part, in general, yay, my dinner's here. I'm going to be munching on my hamburger and fries here. Sorry. Got a hamburger and some French fries just on a plate, and a little container of Rico's nacho cheese sauce that I'm going to spread all over everything. And that's what we're having. Are you going to use a full one yourself, or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to use all of it. I'm going to use the whole container. They're not that big. So, here in a little while, we'll probably look at some documentation, some websites that I've shared some of the stuff on my community page, but Um, rather than, you know, people sifting through my community page looking for links and whatever, I'm going to do that for you and share it on the live here before we're through tonight, depending on how long we're here. In the past, we used to have panels every weekend with people. It could go from anywhere from 2 hours to 5 hours because we wanted to talk about the thing. And that helped in the long run because we all pretty much have a common knowledge of what's happening to us and who's doing it and why. But throughout all that, there's never been a common understanding of how they were doing it. Well, like I said, I've spent a hell of a lot of time trying to figure it out, and come to the understanding that it's brain-computer interface technology for the most part, and AI. Like I said about the webinar, some of the things that these scientists laid out about the technology are how they're accomplishing this. We all know they can, see what we're thinking for the most part. We all know that they know where we're going to go, where we're going to be before we get there, and they're able to set up their scenarios. We all know that they're using the technology to speak to us only, even if we're in a huge crowd. You can be surrounded, and they're still screaming at you and harassing you and terrorizing you and torturing you, even though you're in a crowd of people and no one else hears it because you're the recipient. We know that they run basically a scenario, I don't know, like a playbook over and over through per target. The story may be different, but the script is still the same. It's designed around the current target. They use people from your past. They use people that you know of. They really, with me, have liked to use famous people lately, and well-known people. And this is for the dream manipulation aspect. Now, not all targets have been afflicted with all facets of the program. Should you say program? I hate that word too. A program is something that you volunteered for or consented to be part of. None of us have consented to this. None of the targets consent to be terrorized, harassed, threatened, or killed. That's just ludicrous. But that the gang stalkers would have people believe that you desire this to be happening to you. That's just fucking poppycock. I don't know if you heard that, but he just said, "Oh, he said poppycock." That's Hatchet Boy that lives next door, who is a part of this. And I'm not going to go into that right now. I've done enough videos giving him credit for doing this shit. But anyway, um, uh, you can research brain computer interface technology yourself. You can Google gang stalking jobs for yourself. We proved that last week when John was in here and a couple people were in here, Zach and Charkov, Chad, and I just mentioned to Google search gang stalking jobs, and some will come up in your area. And the general premise for gang stalkers, what they like to do is, oh, no one's targeting you. Gang stalking doesn't exist. I know all of you've heard it. All of you've seen it. Every chat you go to, blah, blah, blah. It's just not happening to you. Why would they target you? Why are you so important? Blah, blah, blah. Well, you're not. You're not different than any other target, okay? Indeed. But if gang stalking isn't a process and it isn't a thing and they aren't being paid for it, why do they hire people for it? If it doesn't exist, if people are not targeted individuals being gang stalked, why the fuck are they hiring people for it? Okay? In your own neighborhood. And you can Google from your location. It will give you urgent gang stalking jobs needed in your area to stalk people. They don't hide that they're stalking people. They don't hide that they're killing people. How is it that they can get away with this and it just remains the way it is forever? So, like I said, rather than me sit here for 2 hours and try to convince people of what's happening, or talking about what we already talked about over and over, I decided to change it up. And as soon as I'm done eating dinner, I'm going to start sharing some scientific evidence, not just opinions, not just assumed possibilities. This technology is behind, for the most part, all of the harassment you're experiencing as a targeted individual. The group uses BCI technology, headsets, what have you, connected on a network that is banded through an AI program which keeps tabs on all the targets. You asked earlier, I think, Irene, about how do they keep tabs on the hundreds of thousands of us targeted individuals. Well, AI and computers do that. And that is pretty much the reason why the script is always the same. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to imagine something new. They don't have to devise new programs because it's a script and it's used on every target, but it's catered to the target. Like I said before, I haven't figured out the exact process of how they connect to a target without them wearing a device. Now, whether it's possible that they're using our phones or our other devices to piggyback on, I'm not certain of that, but I'm of the opinion that it's used through a virtual machine or a virtual headset through AR or VR, where they basically create a BCI headset that isn't real, that's on your head, but it will still gather data. in a virtual sense. Um, uh, God, please don't think I was insulting you. I very rarely give compliments to anyone. I'm actually an ice queen, cold as ice. I wasn't thinking you were insulting me. I, I was, if that's about the sensei comment. What I mean by that, I wasn't saying you were insulting me. I was just trying to tell you that I'm no better than you or any other target. We're all in this together, kind of like Red Green says. I don't know if you've ever heard of Red Green. Canadian comedy show in the 80s. But at the end of every episode, he says, we're all in this together. Keep your stick on the ice. And that's what it is. All of us targets are in this together. We're not separate from each other in that respect. Nobody's getting a trophy, if you see what I mean, right? For best TI. But sorry, I'm chewing. Yummy, honey, thanks. For the most part, during the first couple of years of my targeting, it was just as hard on me, and still is, or just as hard on my wife as it is on me. Because even though she's, not experiencing what I'm experiencing, it's still affecting her because she has to see what's happening to me and to other targets. Now, what's made her understand and believe it more is because she's seen it. She's seen stuff happen, the stuff happening and how it's happening, and heard it from other people from my lives. She doesn't want to have any part of this. She's not going to come on here. She's not going to join the panel. She's not going to be part. She doesn't want to be part of this shit. And I don't blame her, because I don't either.
I can't really be part of it, can't.
Yeah, but you heard what, I don't know if you heard what she just said there. But she says she can't really be part of it because it's not happening to her, at least that we're aware of yet. For myself, I feel like she is. They just haven't been doing the same shit to her they are to me. Yeah, well, I understand that. But I did say I assume, right? But we had a pretty long, heated discussion today. Actually, more like an argument, but I think it all worked out in the end because we came to an understanding about it. She knows I'm dealing with it. She knows I know who's behind it. She sees the effects of it every day. I tell her about the dream manipulation and shit and the things that happen. but she can't really get 100% perspective from it because it's not happening to her, just like anyone else that's on the outside of this. That's why it's so hard for a targeted individual to gain solace from talking to people that don't know what's going on, because they don't understand. And how could they? Ice queens need love too. You right. All right. Hi, Virginia. Like your screen name there says, Irene, about being a person of interest. You know, all of us targeted individuals are persons of interest to gang stalkers because they intend to harm all of us. Not because they like us. We're not interesting to them because they want to be close to us. They're not jealous of us. They don't care about us. They want to harm us. That's the only objective. They have no desire to be close to us other than to spy and to harass and to hurt us. And our families and people we know. Irene is cooler than a fan. Yeah. Like I said, wow, I just looked at, looking at StreamYard right now. I'm not looking at the YouTube live, but I just clicked the YouTube live and just listen to where the YouTube live is compared to where I am right now. It's over. It's over it's over 3 minutes behind us, the YouTube live. So, so it's really behind the time difference between StreamYard and where I'm live at and where the YouTube is. So I have the StreamYard link out there. If somebody wants to come and talk to me while I'm eating before I start trying to share information on the stream, other than my yammering. I'm trying to get this hamburger and french fries down. You don't know how to do what? You just click the link and it'll take you to the back room of the StreamYard, and then I bring you up on the panel. The link that I shared in the chat there. That's if you want to come in. Now, for the most part, I would expect a couple of the usual suspects to come in here and try and troll. Haven't showed up yet, but try and keep a handle on those. I mean, as I've said before, for the trolls, if you want to come up here and talk like a real human, that's fine. But when you come up here and start spewing Nazi shit or racist shit and doing shit like that, you're going to get kicked out and not come back. But they keep trying even after you boot them out of it. of the stream. But you just have to watch that. I don't have anybody as mods anymore. I explain why I don't do that anymore. It's not somebody's responsibility that wants to come here and watch the live to be like hall monitors. I can take care of that myself. If I want to boot somebody's ass out of here, that's my prerogative. Okay, well, okay. Maybe your what browser you're using doesn't work with StreamYard. I don't know. Maybe you don't have a microphone connected, or loud, or whatever. You don't necessarily have to have a camera. You can just, it'll come up with an icon if you don't have a camera. It's like I'm doing right here. What like we were talking about in the chat before I went live about we need a different name for these people. We all know they're gang stalkers, but that term has never really encompassed what they truly are and what they truly do. Kind of like targeted individuals. It doesn't encompass what being harassed, terrorized, threatened, and then ultimately killed over a long-winded time. Yeah. Sellouts is too friendly. So now that I've finished eating my hamburger and fries, I'm going to share something that I've shared before or haven't shared before. And I'm going to share it for educational purposes, just in case YouTube is not happy with me sharing it, and they might decide to give me some flack about sharing it and having everybody watch it. So I'm saying right offhand right here that this video is a instructional webinar on the uses of brain-computer interface technology. It's not my work. I am not affiliated with these people in any way, and I am not trying to infringe on their copyright content. I'm using it on the premise of free use understanding that YouTube has on a sharing process, so that it can be viewed by others. That being said, that being said, while it's going on, we could maybe get some people in here or whatever. But here's what we're going to watch. I will warn you, it's kind of, it's not designed for excitement. It's not going to have any thrills. It's just information.
No explosion.
There's no explosions, no blood and guts, no gratuitous nudity, none of that. But it is what it is. So we're going to start sharing this, and I'm going to kind of shut up, and I maybe stop it here and there to comment.
The aim of the series is to explore emerging issues in the area of brain-computer interfaces, military uses, risks, as well as governance and legal aspects. So brain-computer interfaces are devices and systems that connect the brain to an external device. Since 1973, when the concept of BCIs was coined by Jacques Vidal, the field has evolved.
Now, I'm going to stop it right there. Did you hear what she just said? Okay. Brain-computer interfaces are devices used to connect individuals to computers through whether it be through military uses, scientific research, other aspects. But we'll continue.
Continuously. It is a truly interdisciplinary field, and that includes numerous applications of artificial intelligence. For the longest time, the main developments in this field have been centered on medical applications, but over the years, new non-medical applications have emerged, such as in the entertainment industry, such as gaming, and of course, in the field of defense. So this brings us to the focus and scope of our series. BCIs represent a growing and potentially disruptive area of technology that we believe deserves closer analysis and scrutiny. In this series, we will explore this topic in three main threads. First, understanding the technology and what BCIs are and where the technology really is today. In the next webinar in April, we will focus and we will zoom in on the military applications of the technology, including risks of the technology itself and potential risks in the context of armed conflict. And the third part in May will explore issues linked to governance and international law. So today our focus is really on the technology, what BCIs are, how they work, and what sort of capabilities they enable. Let me introduce you to our speakers. We are joined today by three outstanding experts in this field. The first in order of presentations is Dr. Ricardo Chavariaga, who is a researcher at the Center for AI at the Zurich University of Applied Sciences and at CLAIR in Zurich. CLAIR stands for a Confederation of Laboratories for AI Research in Europe. Today, he will provide an overview of BCI's technologies and where the technology is today. Dr. Ambarish Pawar is a neuroengineer and brain-computer interfaces researcher at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. And today his presentation will focus on implantable brain-computer interfaces. Third, and certainly not least in our panel today is Dr. Caterina Cinel. She's a lecturer in brain sciences and neural engineering at the Essex BCI lab at the University of Essex. Today, her presentation will focus on the use of BCI technology for cognitive enhancement. The webinar will last 1 hour, so each of the speakers will present for about 10 minutes, and we will, of course, have a Q&A section at the end. So now, without further ado, I will give the floor to Ricardo, who will, I believe, also share his screen for us today. So thank you, Ricardo. You have the floor.
Thank you very much for the opportunity of sharing some inputs and some information about the current state of neurotechnologies and brain-computer interfaces. You should be able to see my screen now, and very succinctly, I'm going to present what these technologies are, how are they used, some of the different areas, and some insights on what are the current discussions on risks and governance frameworks that will be further developed in this webinar series. So, as it was mentioned before, there was an interest of developing systems that could help in issues of mental health and medical applications related to our neural systems. And this led to the development of technological solutions that allow us to measure, interpret, or modulate the activity of the neural system, namely our brain, our spinal cord, and our nerves. And these different technologies, they are usually pulled together under the name of neurotechnologies. And one particular instance of these neurotechnologies are the brain-computer interfaces. And what these brain-computer interfaces are systems that are able to measure the activity of our brain. For instance, as in this example, using electroencephalography, electrodes that are placed on the scalp that measure electrical activity generated by our neurons. Then this activity is interpreted using machine learning or artificial intelligence algorithms in order to extract information about the user state, levels of attention, vigilance, sleeps, or the intentions to move a limb, intention to write or say a particular letter or message. And once the signal is decoded by the algorithms, the information can be transferred onto a device, here illustrated as a prosthetic leg, and then we can control an artificial device using a modulation of our brain activity. And this can be a prosthetic device for mobility, can be a communication interface, or can be an assessment of the characteristics of this particular person. And more importantly, is not only a unidirectional communication, but also the effect that our brain activity has in the artifact and in the world is fed back to the person, so that we have an actual closed loop interaction with artifacts, with the world, through activity from the brain. And this closed loop is usually what the brain-computer interfaces allows us to do. I'm show here an example using electroencephalography. Is a technology that has more than 100 years, is widely used in clinical research, and there are a long-standing history on how to use, how to develop, and how to validate these technologies for measuring the brain. But in the last years, there have been a huge drive for developing novel ways to interact with our neural systems, can be better versions of these electroencephalography caps that can be now acquired as consumer technology at lower cost, can be implanted electrodes that are that could be placed on the surface of the brain or inside of the brain, or can be other type of technologies that can as well measure or also stimulate our nervous system. So when we talk about neurotechnologies, there is not a single way to measure, interpret, or modulate the activity of the neural system. There is actually a whole, say, diversity of methodologies. Some of them, as the EEG, well established, well known. Others, like the ones on top, that are still at the level of experimental research. Some of them haven't even been tested yet in humans at this stage. So we have multiple technologies, not all of them at the same level of maturity. And therefore, the possibility of using them in real-world applications will also vary depending on their stage of technological maturity. And in the same way that we have this diversity of technologies to interact directly with the neural system, we have a whole diversity of applications. Can be in the medical domain, rehabilitation, assistive devices, can be in the consumer domain, assessment of technology, wellness assistance for mindfulness, neuromarketing tools for assessing the level of attention, as well as military applications to improve the capabilities of armed forces or to diagnose or treat lesions that might be linked to activities in the field. So in a nutshell, when we talk about brain-computer interfaces, there are different types of applications, different types of systems, different levels of maturity that need to be taken into account instead of interpreting them as a single monolithic block of solutions and applications. More specifically, how can we use these brain-computer interfaces? First, type of application can be interaction. Can we control prosthetic devices? Can we control communication systems, typewriting systems by decoding the brain activity or by stimulating the peripheral or central nerves? That's one of the first applications that we have that comes from the traditional of clinically oriented applications that, by the way, was kickstarted and had a huge impulse through programs such as Revolutionizing Prosthetics from the DARPA agency in the United States. We can also have the possibility of monitoring the user states or the person state that can be used for diagnosis of mental health disorders. It can be used to provide a regulation of activity and help people to focus in a better way, or to assess when people have lower or higher levels of vigilance. We can use it in rehabilitation, often in combination of measurement and stimulation of the neural system to help to recover the, for instance, mobility capabilities after a cerebrovascular accident. And last but not least, we can also have applications where we can try to not only recover, but go beyond the capacities, the normal capacities. And there are studies on neural stimulation that can eventually produce short-term improvement in attention levels and memory retention. So all these different possibilities has created, of course, a lot of attention, and a large number of actors are part of the development of these technologies, coming from research agencies, funding agencies, research institutions.
Let me stop it right there for 1 minute. Okay, if you have been listening to his explanation of the possibilities that this technology provides, military applications, defense applications, monitoring, which means surveillance, manipulation, rehabilitation, enhancement, interaction. All of those premises, all those uses are being exploited by gang stalkers against targeted individuals through subvocal recognition, which is how they basically speak to you, monitoring how they can see what you're looking at, see what thoughts you're forming when you're texting someone, how they run it through the process and then through the AI and pop it out on their computer. And this all happens in a matter of seconds. And we'll let it go on.
Institutions, the private sector is widely active in this domain, in all the different sectors that I mentioned before: consumer, medical, and military applications. And of course, the governance actors, starting from standardization, the standard development organizations, regulatory bodies are also paying close attention to it and start to develop frameworks that can be used to steer the development of these technologies and to assess their functionality, their suitability for the intended applications, as well as their safety. And last but not least, whether they are developed in a responsible way and following appropriate ethical frameworks. So in this landscape of different activities and prospective uses, we can look at different foreseeable scenarios and applications ranging from the present to the probable, plausible, and possible applications of these different technologies. At the present, we have systems like cochlear implants, which are widely used. There are a large number of people who are currently using this system. There is also a growing number of people who have deeply implanted electrodes that can alleviate the symptoms of Parkinson's disease, and it's also been explored for other type of mental illnesses, which are basically systems that are already deployed. They are our reality today. We start to see more and more efforts to use brain-computer interfaces in rehabilitation, and as now assessing the validity and the added value of using this system. When we look at the probable, what we're having out of the research pipeline and enter into deployment is more use of these systems as assistive neuroprosthetics, systems that support cognitive enhancement, both in the civil and military domain, and performance monitoring. Can it be in the learning processes for education, can be as well in the workplace to assess whether people are able to cope with the task, in particular for highly stressful jobs or applications. And in the more possible and hypothetical scenarios, there are, of course, possibilities of using these techniques to have a more powerful possibilities to assess or have access to information that is embedded into our neural activity that may not be necessarily accessible by other existing means today. So in the having these different
Okay, I stopped it again for a moment. At the bottom there, the possibilities is why we're here. Because those possibilities are how they're exploiting us. Through merging brain and AI, brain jacking. They're jacking your brain. They're hacking, they're taking control of a person's brain. They're implanting memories. You see it right there, memory implantation. That means they're data set. And also the mental surveillance. That is, for lack of a better part, the demon in this technology.
Possibilities, we can of course start looking at the different type of risks. Some of them are at the individual level, risk of the safety, risk linked to the cybersecurity, as these systems are often interconnected and using different types of communication channels that might be accessible by third parties. There are other risks that are linked to how the systems are developed and who is responsible in case that something doesn't work in the way is expected. And there are also some novel types of risks that some people have put under the umbrella of neuro rights that can be framed in terms of the rights that we have on preserving our mental privacy. That is an extension to the usual concept of privacy, but now given this new possibility, how does it change? And the mental integrity of not having the mental characteristics being affected in a way that we haven't consented to. And the more societal risk, there are, of course, different possibilities of abusing or misusing these technologies that may go to surveillance, to phenotyping according to mental characteristics. There are risks that are linked to who has access to these different technologies and how it can become, and a factor that exacerbates existing inequalities in the world today. Another risk that I want to mention is the risk of doing nothing, that just becoming too afraid of the other risks by these technologies and not exploiting and potentializing the benefits that they can bring. So in this framework of the technology development and these risks, there are different efforts of governing these technologies that you will hear more later in this series. Just to give a very brief overview of things that are going on, there are activities at different levels of governance, going from the low level, more technically related instruments such as good practices and standards, to emerging frameworks for clinical and consumer regulations, all the way to international law and treaties. And by looking at this slide, you may have the impression that there are many things going on, which is, say, true. And it might be a good idea, but it's also a large risk when if we look at the possibility of having these different efforts not properly aligned, not properly coordinated, and not properly representing the interests of all the different stakeholders at the global level. In a nutshell, when we talk about brain-computer interfaces, we are not talking about a single type of systems, but multiple applications, multiple stakeholders. These are not only technical developments, but what we call socio-technical systems, as they have an influence on the people who use them and those around them. Creates a new way for interacting with machines and with other humans. And very importantly, the development of these technologies is extremely linked to other emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, robotics, and others. And last but not least, the heterogeneity of actors and applications domain creates a lot of uncertainty and opportunity to having gaps in the development, in the governance, and the knowledge that we have about these technologies, and is leading currently on synergistic relation between the development with, for instance, medical application benefiting from developments that are done in the consumer realm and also in the military domain, but also regulatory and governance tensions. When it is not clear, how can we have a consistent framework that may deal with technologies that are jumping across domains and across sectors, or depending on the situation, the context, and the user. And this is very, very briefly some thoughts to start thinking about what these brain-computer interfaces are. And thank you again for the invitation to be here today. I'm happy to hear the rest of it and interact with all of you later on.
Thank you so much, Ricardo. That was wonderful, and I think it was a really good sort of introduction and overview of where the field is, and you also provided us with some food for thought for governance, for how this governance sort of landscape is evolving. So we will discuss, of course, more. We already have questions in the Q&A box, but now let's move on to the next speaker. So Ambarish will present today on implantable interfaces and on their work at Johns Hopkins. So Ambarish, you have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of exciting work going on right now in implantable brain-computer interfaces, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So here the goal is to help people who are paralyzed to regain lost functions using implantable brain-computer interfaces, or BCI. In general, BCIs work by enabling patients to control external devices like a robotic arm or a cursor on a computer, just using the thoughts or their brain signals. So there's several ways of measuring brain signals. The most commonly used one is the electroencephalogram, or EEG electrodes, which are placed on the scalp and can measure the course activity of the brain. Other ways include placing electrodes either on the surface of the brain, for example, ECOG electrodes, or by having electrodes actually penetrate the brain. Now, these technologies are called implantable electrodes, and it does involve opening up the skull and placing these electrodes in the brain. The advantage of these electrodes is that since you are getting close to the brain, you get really high resolution signals that can be used to control BCIs in a very nuanced way. The other advantage is that they can be placed in specific areas of the brain depending on their application. So for example, if you want to move a robotic arm, then the electrodes can be placed in the motor area of the brain. If you want to have a speech BCI, they can be placed in the speech area of the brain. So here is what is an example of an intracortical electrode, one that is commonly used in the field. So this is called a Utah array that is developed by BlackRock Neurotech. It basically consists, so this particular example consists of 100 needles that can be implanted in different parts of the brain. And as you can see, they are pretty tiny. So at this stage, hundreds or even thousands of these electrodes can be placed in different areas of the brain, depending on what you want to control. So how do these BCIs actually work? And Ricardo touched on some aspects of this in his talk. So basically, you have implanted electrodes that can measure the brain signals. Now, the goal here is to infer a person's intent just from their brain signals. And this can be done by a decoder, which can be an AI or a machine learning algorithm. So the machine learning algorithm basically learns what the person intended to do. So for example, it can learn what, for example, what direction a person wanted to move their hand. If they wanted to move their hand or attempted to move their hand to the right, then you'll have brain signals of a particular pattern. If they wanted to move their hand to the left, you will have brain signals of another particular pattern. So remember here that these might be severely paralyzed people, so they might not actually be able to move their arms. So here they are imagining or attempting to move them, which still produces brain signals. Now, once you know the person's intent, that can then be used to control a prosthesis. For example, it can be used to grasp objects and to manipulate them using a robotic arm, or they can be used to control a cursor on a screen on a typing interface, so you can type complete sentences using a BCI. So again, there's been a lot of very exciting work that has been done here, especially in rehabilitation of people with paralysis. So for example, some of the examples here are where a BCI allowed a person who is unable to articulate speech to communicate using a speech to text. So this person cannot speak clearly, but they attempted to speak, and a BCI converted that into text on a computer. BCI also allowed a person with paralysis to move a robotic arm by just using their thoughts. Again, this person is completely paralyzed and cannot use their arms, but they were able to use a robotic arm just using a BCI. BCI also allowed a person with paralysis to type complete sentences just by thinking about writing them. So again, this is a completely paralyzed person, but when they attempted to write, a BCI converted that into text on a computer. So the amazing thing here is that using this BCI, this person was able to type at 90 characters per minute, where a typical person, an able-bodied person, can do it at about 115 characters per second on a smartphone. So you are approaching really high levels of performance here. So as you can see, speaking, moving your arms, writing, and texting are things that we take for granted, but are extremely difficult for people who have severe paralysis. Being able to do this using BCI is a big step forward for these individuals to perform these activities of daily living. Now, another approach to perform especially complex tasks is using what we call a shared AI BCI control. Here, some aspects of the task are done by an AI or an intelligent robot, and other aspects are controlled by a BCI. For example, in this video, the task is to eat a pastry using a knife and fork using two robotic arms in a coordinated manner. So let's go to this video.
Cut and eat food. Move right hand forward to start. Moving fork to food.
So here the robot is moving the fork towards the pastry.
Select food location. Right hand. Forward, back, left, right.
Now the person is using BCI to control the location of the fork depending on the size of the bite he wants to take of the pastry.
Poke food. Move right hand down.
Then he uses the BCI to poke food.
Moving knife to left of fork.
This is done by the robot.
Select cut point. Move left hand. Forward, back, left, right. Cut food. Move left hand down. Move right hand right or back.
This is done by the BCI in a coordinated manner.
Retracting knife. Scoop food. Roll right hand right. Moving food to mouth.
This is done automatically by the robot.
Align food with mouth. Up, down, left, right.
And the aligning is done by the
Eat food.
BCI.
Move food to mouth.
So as you can see, this is a very complex task which requires two hands to work in a very coordinated manner. And this is something that able-bodied people take for granted, this coordination of the two hands, but it is extremely difficult to do with the BCI. And this is where a shared or collaborative way of AI and BCI can really help make this task easier. So as you can see, this is a very exciting time to be in BCI research, as there's rapid progress being made daily with improved electrode technologies, increased understanding of the brain and brain signals, improved AI algorithms, and suddenly sky is the limit as to what can be done to help individuals with severe paralysis to perform these activities of daily living, activities that able-bodied people take for granted. And the hope is, and my hope is, that these BCIs will help greatly improve the quality of life for individuals who need it the most. Finally, I'd like to thank all my collaborators at Johns Hopkins University and Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory, and all our funding agencies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambarish. That was fascinating and really, really a lot of food for thought there. And I think it's a wonderful sort of background you provided us with for the next webinar in particular, where we will talk more. We will take all of this to look more in the military setting and what we can do with this kind of capabilities and technologies when applied in the context of armed conflict and in defense. For defense purposes, but for now, this was really, really fascinating, and thank you so much for really showing to our audience what they can really do. So from this, we're actually moving closer to, in a way, to the scope of the second webinar. We're making a segue now to discuss more about the field of human enhancement and of enhancement. So how can we use these capabilities, these BCI technologies to enhance certain functions? Katerina will cover this. She will also talk a bit about the military applications, but I think she will start with a more sort of general introduction to the topic of cognitive enhancement. So Katerina, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, okay, so well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. And well, thanks to previous speakers who introduced the topic of BCI and gave an excellent overview of what's going on. So yes, I will focus my, I will focus my talk on the use of BCI for cognitive enhancement. So I hope, well, I'm sure now you have quite understood the basic principles of brain-computer interfaces and how the brain signals can be used in, for example, controlling external devices, or for interacting with the external environment. So Ricardo earlier has mentioned the fact that BCI, however, can be used for example, monitoring attention. And so there are quite a lot of applications currently being developed in this sense. So try to understand the state, the mental state of an individual. For example, their sustained attention, their ability to respond to high workload. And there are applications, well, in real life environments, such as driving simulations or air traffic controllers. So how this works is what very often is done with EEG, but not necessarily. It's so the neural activity is monitor as the user are engaged in a specific task. And then typically in closed loop systems, the BCI, based on the state, for example, there might be a drop in attention, the system will change. For example, the flow of information, the type of information that is given to the user, or maybe the user needs a break. So this is a way of creating a closed loop system. This can be, this is also done quite a lot, used in combination with stimulation. So, for example, with the Scania magnetic stimulation or electric stimulation. So, for example, again, if there is a drop in attention, some specific areas of the skull can be stimulated, so that maybe the level of attention goes back to more normal level, safer levels. So at Essex at BCI Lab, we have started a few years ago working on using BCIs for augmenting group decision making. So the idea is that, well, we know that there are many advantages of working in group. In a group, groups are better, for example, for perception, for action, and even for intelligence. And so we have used this concept in combination with BCI. What we do, what we have started doing is using the BCI to evaluate the confidence through the neural signals of a person in a group when they are making a specific decision. And what is important here, however, is that we use hybrid BCI. So BCI does not only rely on the neural signals, but also on any other type of signals, really, like physiological, like eye movements, or behavioral signals, so responses, actual responses, reaction times, for example. So in this example, we have two users who are engaged in a relatively simple task, in the sense that it only requires a binary decision, and it's about target detection. So here, for example, users have to recognize a target person from images from CCTV images. So each user will make the decision, was the target there or not. However, so they will input the decision. However, what the BCI does is it assesses, based, for example, on the reaction times, but also on the neural signals. The BCI will assess the confidence of each individual making the decision. And then this confidence is used to weigh the decision of that particular member of the group. And so all the decisions that are combined with the relative confidence is weighted by the, is assessed by the BCI, and then a final group decision is made. And so we have shown that in many different contexts, this way of making decisions improves the accuracy, in many cases also the speed of decisions. So here is just an example of applications that the task experiments that we have done over the years. We started with very simple tasks, target discrimination tasks, for example, just to to test the concept and to develop a BCI for group decision making. And then over the years, we have used different types of tasks. What is important to do is to apply to use different type to see if this way of making decision works with different type of stimuli, for example, auditory stimuli or visual stimuli or faces or and then we also have done more recently used video sequences where again the users have to detect a target, and then in the last few years we have used we have moved into decisions where they're not binary decisions made based on just on perceptual information, but they are more strategic decisions where the users have to assess different more complex information and over a longer time window. For example, here we have a task where, well, this is a target discrimination task where the user it simulates a person being in an outpost, a military person being in an outpost, and it's during the night, and another military person approaches from anywhere in far away. And as they walk nearer to the outpost, the user needs to decide whether they are enemy or friends. And they have then to decide to make the decision as quickly as possible. Again, here using the BCI in groups, the decision can improve as compared, for example, to simple majority decisions within the group. So and then so this we have taken this concept of in groups using a BCI for group decision making into a broader context, and in particular we are currently working on using group BCI, this collaborative BCI as we call it, in human machine teams. So here we have, this is just a representation of some of the framework that we have developed recently and on which we are working currently. So we have again the collaborative BCI. Human users make their decisions, and then this is assessed by the BCI. But this is also, there is also collaboration with artificial agents. And then decisions from artificial agents and human agents are then integrated and coordinated. So what is important here is not just what the new element, if you like, and how BCI can be used. It's not just augmenting the decision, improving the decision of the humans, but it's also assessing the relationship between the human agents and the AI agents. So here we have, this is very important because we know that in human machine teams, the element of trust is quite critical, it's quite crucial. And so the BCI, in this case, it can potentially assess the trust from the neural signals of the neural signals and also other, as we said, behavioral signals, the trust of the humans and on the AIs, and therefore assess how they are interacting together, how they accept the AIs. And so, and again, considering humans working together, we also have, we can also use techniques such as hyperscanning. So we know that when humans work together in groups, there are patterns of their neural activity that tend to synchronize together. So when, for example, we can have information from this synchronized neural activity about how the how well the humans interact together in teams, effective communication, and so on. And therefore, this is something that is being studied. This is being still something that is being investigated, but potentially can provide information about how well the effectiveness of teamwork and team performance, and also team membership. So by using BCI based on happy scanning, we can have information about whether, for example, an individual is working well within a specific team, whether maybe they need to be moved to a different team. And similar to these, also the concept of neuroscreening is being developed. Here again, the BCI, based on the response of an individual on specific tasks, can assess how good a person is for that specific task, and therefore creating a sort of neuroscreening or developing strategies for personnel selection, for example. Well, we have seen already from earlier, Ricardo was talking about the different types of neurotechnologies and how they are continuously developing very important aspects when considering BCIs in real-world environment is how good these are at interpreting the neural signal, or then also the degree of how invasive they are, how portable or expensive these technologies are, how easy to use, their energy consumption. So these are all things that needs to be considered, and they are considered. So again, there is a lot of improvement and development in this area. Yeah, I think that this is almost all that I wanted to say in these 10 minutes. And yeah, so things to consider. How ready are the neurotechnologies? Again, Ricardo has mentioned the neuroethics and neuro rights. So things to consider when using information from the mental activity. And it's important to know what the limitations are for the BCI. So there are enormous potentials, but there are also risks. And for example, one of those is being too much over-reliant on a BCI, so knowing what the limitations are. And I was talking earlier about human-machine teams, and this is, I think, this is a good example. This is a way in which we can limit the risks, because it's not, there is not too much reliance on a machine, or not too much reliance on the human. They collaborate together. We have seen this example earlier of the robot and human collaborating into eating that nice video. That was very interesting, and again another good example of how machines and humans can work together. And that's everything from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Katerina. That is super interesting. And of course, we're going to touch more upon this in the next webinar, but this was a brilliant sort of way to wrap up the presentations for this first session. You gave us a first sort of set of insights into what the military is doing this, or how they are useful and used in the military field. So I think we can move to that. We have about 15 minutes. We can move on to the questions. I see that Ricardo already answered a few questions in the chat. So I'm just going to go straight to the question from Pamela, which actually ties in with the question I had, especially for Ambarish, on research guidelines and research ethical guidelines in the context of invasive implantable interfaces. But I'll connect it in a way with what Pamela is asking. She's asking that if we're able to influence the brain, there's definitely then, at least it will appear, there is a thin line between modulating the brain and actually manipulating a person's intent. So how are we thinking about ethics in this domain? And I'm asking you, Ambarish, first, because I know that you're working on invasive and interfaces. So how have research guidelines and the ethical guidelines evolved in the context of such capabilities? At least let's start first with the university, at the university level where you're working. How have you thought about ethics in this field, and how have you approached this so far?
So at least in terms of rehab and helping paralyzed people with this, I think in terms of ethics, there needs to be a conversation between researchers, between patient advocates, and regulators to sort of make sure we are all on the same page, and we are talking to each other to make sure that it's the technology is safe. So it's important for researchers to understand what the needs of the patients are. You know, does someone need to need to control a wheelchair? Does someone need to be able to feed themselves, or to communicate with their loved ones? So I think there needs to be good communication between them. The regulators play an important role in making sure that the technology is safe for the patient. You know, there's all these companies, different groups working to bring this technology into commercialization. In terms of maybe security of how if things can be influenced by stimulation, for example, there's still a lot of neuroscience work that needs to be done to reach a stage where you can even start influencing, like thoughts of other people's or through intervention. But I think the one thing that we try to do is try to keep our data very, very secure, and to make sure that there are safeguards that no one can come in and hack into the systems and, you know, like take control of the systems, for example. So those are things that we take very seriously, and going forward, those kind of security measures have to be brought into place. Frameworks have to be brought into place to make sure that there is no outside intervention without the person's express consent.
No, thank you. And Ricardo, and I see you have your hand up. I was going to ask you to jump in on this anyway, because you've already touched a bit upon the question of regulations and governance, and also Katerina, I'm sure, especially you working the intersection between, you know, civilian applications and really more the military side. What are sort of the technical and the legal safeguards that you have that you can put in place in such situations, and what sort of challenges have you confronted with? So because Ricardo had his hand first, I'll give the floor to Ricardo, but then Katerina, if you can also share a few thoughts on this.
Yeah, maybe the first thing I would like to say is that there is no guarantee. So if you think, or you're told that there is a guarantee that you'll be safe, secure, and respectful of human dignity, and there is a foolproof system, then you may need to revisit what you know about the system. And the reason for it is that we are not talking about technical systems, but socio-technical systems, where part of the operation and effect and impact of these systems go beyond the technical part and are fall into the human user and the society that is using. So that has led to the development of the so-called socio-technical standards, where we are not only looking at aspects like the electrical safety of a given device or the physical characteristics, but also how do they affect the humans and the environment around? How do we integrate aspects such as human dignity, bias, fairness into the evaluation and assessment of the of a system in general? So that's one part. Another part that is one of the keystones of responsible research and innovation is that this is a constant process of evaluation and re-evaluation of the risk, opportunities, and impacts. So we go from a point where we check system once and we consider that it is safe from then on, to the need to establishing a continuous process of assessment. In the medical sector, we have the aspect of post-market vigilance. When the pharmacological companies, they know that they need to be vigilant and monitor side effects of those drugs that have been already approved, because we know that this is not enough and things may come later and new information may appear, in particular when we deal with emerging technologies. And this is some of the things that we can put in place at the technical, but also legal dimensions that can help us address the ethical concerns. And here, not only the ethical, but also the societal concerns that can be helpful for building these safeguards, knowing that there is no guarantee.
Thanks, Ricardo. Just to say that I think it's something similar to what Yasmin raised in the chat. So you already answered to her, but perhaps just to kind of direct our participants also read your answers there, because she's asking a similar question about this challenge of dual use and how researchers are aware of this and alerted to the possibility of their research being used with dual use purposes. But Katerina, please go ahead and share your thoughts on this.
I just wanted to add to what Ricardo said, the fact that so the users also need to be aware of that. So it's one important aspect of this is making the users aware of the risks or what there is also a lot of disinformation, I think, about what BCI currently can do and what cannot do. Of course, maybe well, probably BCI will do more and more of what it's doing now, but at the moment there are many limitations, and so I think that people sometimes tend to be quite scared of what BCI is. You see very often these like titles about mind trading. Maybe it will be possible soon, but it's not absolutely about that at the moment. But again, just saying, users need to be aware of what it is, it's not, and yes, all the ethical concerns. So important is also the informed choices. Do I want to use it? There are now on the market like a stimulator, like Tuscany current stimulators, like even I think in Amazon you can find very simple ones, very simple EEG devices. So people should know what these are and what the risks are and what potentially these devices can do. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I think this is something that we will explore in depth at the last part of the series. I know we will talk a lot there about to refuse, for example, in the military context, because we talk a lot, and Ambarish mentioned this also in his answer earlier, that in the context of civilian use and purely medical use, of course there is this element of consent, but this becomes more complex and more complicated in the context of active service members. But this will be just to give all of you a teaser for the third part, and we will discuss this more there. But I wanted to ask you actually on this, Katerina, because you also said that it's important to understand what BCIs are, what they are not, where the limitations are. What is in your view? Because also it was interesting when you presented there was this image of the I think it was one of your experiments on one of your tests on understanding how, for example, a soldier can identify a colleague or versus an enemy sooner or faster with the help of interfaces. What are the sort of the indicators of BCI reliability during use? So when you use when you have BCI, when you're using one, when one is sort of it's actively being used, what is an indicator of it being reliable enough or sort of functioning as per expectations?
Yeah, okay. So the short answer is there isn't like a clear indicators. So it's not that BCI tells you or the user can understand immediately whether the BCI is accurate or not, for example. However, there are indicators like, well, in that specific example that you mentioned of the soldier approaching the outpost. Well, first of all, in those applications, those that we use for decision making, the BCI doesn't necessarily act. So the BCI can aggregate the decision, but it's not necessarily the final decision. So it's not that the BCI like shoots, for example, or make an action. So just to clarify that, but what can happen in this situation is because the BCI bases their like the decision on the evaluation of confidence. There could be, for example, it could find a discrepancy between the normal confidence that the user has versus maybe at some point the BCI is losing, it needs to be retrained, and the assessment is not good anymore. And so this could be assessed based on the discrepancy between what was happening earlier and maybe during training, so the BCI needs to be retrained, and what's happening in that moment when the BCI is losing in accuracy. And similar things could be done when BCI is used in a more classic way, like, for example, controlling an external device. Is the user maybe taking much longer than typically to control whatever they want to control? Or, I don't know, in a BCI speller, are they attempting too many times to choose a letter and delete the letter? So these are more I think, I don't know if Riccardo Yambarish knows of better ways of assessing this, but I think it's very indirect measures rather than like a straightforward way of assessing the accuracy.
Thank you, Kater. I think Ambarish actually had his hand raised earlier. Yeah. Did you want to follow up on this?
Yeah, so just to add to that, at least in implantable technologies, change in signals is a real issue. So like signals will look a particular way this month, and they might be completely different the next month, and that can affect the performance of a BCI. So this is an active area of research where you need to figure out how to keep up performance with minimal human intervention as the longer the BCI is implanted. So, this could be another way where AI could come in handy, because, it should be able to maybe automatically track down the data that the signals have changed and then make adjustments on the fly just to make sure that the BCI maintains its performance.
Also on this topic, a couple of years ago, we made an analysis of the existing standards for brain-computer interfaces. And one of the findings was that there is no commonly agreed way to measure performance. So a lot of efforts have come from performance metrics that come from machine learning, artificial intelligence, that are only focused on one part of the system, the decoding of the neural activity, that does not necessarily reflect the overall performance of the system. So one of the elements that we need to take into consideration is that measuring performance of a system is not only the algorithm, but it's also what is the final outcome. So, and one of the points to keep in mind is that we should not focus that much on individual elements of a BCI, but really on the entire solution. Does this prosthetic device, is it fit for purpose or not? Is the communication reliable or not? And that's one of the elements that has been underdeveloped in the field, in particular because long-term, large-scale evaluation of these systems are extremely difficult to conduct. It's even more difficult to get funding for them in order to have a proper assessment for it. And I think this is one of the elements that need to be taken into consideration. Performance is not only classification accuracy, but it also includes human factors, the added value, and whether the user is actually getting any benefit. We saw from assistive technologies that many of the advanced prosthetics are not actually used by their users because older, simpler systems seem to be equally useful to them, despite these more modern and technologically oriented solutions providing better features. They are simply not giving enough added value to the users.
Wow, that's a very interesting and important point, I think, which we can conclude today. Unfortunately, we are approaching the end of the webinar, and I know we have one more question, but I'm afraid we won't have time to answer it. However, the question is really tackling into something we will discuss a bit in the beginning of the next webinar, which is the division between or the sort of the proportion of research and funding that goes into the civilian and medical applications versus the purely military oriented applications. But we will definitely touch upon this in the following seminar, in the following webinar, sorry, in April. So with this, thank you very much to our brilliant speakers today, and thank you all for such an active and very interested engagement today. More is coming on this, as I mentioned. We will organize 2 more webinars just to provide a teaser in part 2, which will take place in April, and you will get the invites maybe.
Okay. Well, there you have it in a nutshell. Explained by scientists. The uses and the potential applications and exploitations of people using this technology. Now, I'm not going to show the next installment of the webinar. I'm going to allow you, the viewer, to seek that out for yourself. But this is the technology that is behind Gang Stalkers. They explain all the nuances, all the effects, the how-tos, and ways they can exploit a person with it. And like I said, V2K is done through subvocal recognition, the dream manipulation. They're able to implant fake dreams in your head and manipulate those dreams. I've shown you about the Mindwave BCI headset that has an application where it has movies that you can put yourself in and interact in the movie. This is what they're doing, okay? This is how they're torturing people. This is how gang stalkers are killing people, how they're terrorizing people, how they're making us appear crazy when we're not, how they're implanting voices in your head, how they're manipulating your devices. They don't need to hack your device. They can think about it. Because once they get in your head, they get your password. They have all of your information. They don't need to be a hacker. They packed your brain. They don't give a fuck about your computer or the protocols or the firewalls. They don't need to worry about those because they can get the passwords right out of your head. To your Wi-Fi, to your cell phone, to every website you've ever been to, every page you've ever looked at. All of it. Now, I've said this before. If this is not a world security issue, I don't know what is. No one's safe from these people. Your privacy is no longer. The brain has no firewall. You can't stop this technology from infiltrating and invading your brain. Faraday cages don't help. People trying on tinfoil hats don't help. Submerging underwater doesn't help. None of that. Now, it's my opinion, the only way you have to protect yourself is to acquire your own brain-computer interface and at least record what they're doing to you using that BCI, because you can do that. And if you're so inclined, like I've said before, if you have the knowledge and you want to take the fight back to them, I really don't care. All I know is that they don't care what they're doing to you. That's all I know. And they don't care if you consent. It has no bearing on the situation. They're gonna fucking do this to you anyway. And no matter how much you argue or how much you fight or how good a person you are, it doesn't make any difference. They don't care about what person you are. They just care about how they can exploit you. And that's it. Simply as that. Now, if anyone would like to come up here and chat, I would be willing to do that. But if there are any questions or whatever for me, because like I said, I've been doing a lot of research on this, and I just figured it's a lot easier for me to let people that develop the technology and understand all the nuances of it, other than myself, explain it to you. Granted, it wasn't a very good movie. Okay, the stars in it were nobodies. They'd never seen it before, and they weren't trying to keep you on the edge of your seat. But all the information in here is pertinent. This shit is real, and gang stalkers are exploiting this technology, and they know they are. They know they're exploiting this technology. That's why they did that webinar, to explain the risks, the military applications. We are basically in what Mitch Ryder said in the movie Heavy Metal, 1,000 psychic wars, because this is synthetic telepathy and they are using it against us. I think I've said all I need to say there. So I'm going to share the link one last time. And should anybody desire to come up and chat for a little while, that would be great. But if not, we're at 101 hour and 48 minutes and 13 seconds. I'll sit here and talk a little longer until maybe 2 hours. And if no one decides to come up here and join in the conversation, well, it's not really a conversation when I'm just talking, but I'm trying not to really be a lecturer, but I don't ever ask for money. I don't ask for donations. And when people say they want to donate to me, which they have before, I'll tell you again, if you really feel the need to donate to somebody, donate to St. Jude or somebody like that that helps people. PETA, whatever, animals, anything, but I'm not going to take donations. I'm not here to make money. I'm here to make people aware of what this technology is being used for, and that I'm a victim of it, just like other targeted individuals. And I'm really tired of being treated like a second-class citizen because I'm being victimized. That's why I'm here. That's why I have this show every Friday. That's why I encourage people to come up and share their experiences, because we are being tortured and killed here. Granted, it takes they do it in a long-term fashion, but it is happening. And as I said before, the powers that be either know about it and don't care, or they're afraid of admitting it and causing mass hysteria or panic. Either way, they're in the wrong. It's not a mystery what's going on here. Just laid it out right in front of you, like I've been doing for every week for a couple years now. So my advice to you is, if you're a targeted individual, if you can't afford it, spend some money to get your own brain-computer interface and record it yourself, because there's no firewall that can stop them doing this. There's nothing to stop them hacking your brain, and they're doing it from a remote location. There's no need for implants. As the one speaker said, that implants only make it easier and more accurate to detect the signals from the brain, which is in the invasive process. But there are non-invasive processes like near infrared and acoustic auditory detection, and MEG, which is magnetic encephalography. So if you are being targeted and you are experiencing B2K, them watching what you're doing, seeing everything you type, everyone you talk to, manipulating your dreams, get your own BCI and record it yourself. And also you'll be able to see the possibilities that it opens up, because they can affect your body with it. They affect your mind with it. So it's as simple as that. And they don't care that you're a victim. They don't care they're victimizing you. They don't care that they're terrorizing you. They'll go after your families. They'll go after your friends. They'll use them against you. They'll use your life against you. That's how they do this. And like I said before, they have a script that they blanket across the board. That's how they're able to do it. They don't change the script. They just change the target. Like I said, I can't explain it better than scientists that you've just heard here. But I can give you a different viewpoint from it, as per an experience viewpoint, being someone that they're doing it to, who they're exploiting with the technology. I've spent several years now researching and trying to figure it all out, and I'm 100% certain. It's not microwaves. Maybe microwaves are a carrier for it, but the technology is brain-computer interface, and then the exploitation of it. by these gang stalkers, or should I say serial killer cult. So that being said, in 5 more minutes, I might as well just say it, and I'm going to sit here for 5 more minutes and just blather for 5 minutes now, because I really don't I don't think I can elaborate any more on it in a unless you want to hear it in layman terms, that you're fucked and they know it, and they know they can get away with it because they've been getting away with it, because police won't help, nobody will help. They know you're a victim, but they don't care. My cat agrees. So just remember, targeted individuals, we're all in this together. Nobody's going to get any trophy for being the #1 target. I know the gang stalkers try to encroach on you with that you're somehow special, you're a chosen one, or you have something that that no one else has. No, you're just a target, and they're exploiting you. We're all in the same boat, and they're sinking it, and there's no life vest. It just depends how long you can tread water.
How about yet?
What?
How about yet?
Yet. Very, very good. Very good, sweetheart. Yet. Well, that's why I'm here. I think the only choice we have is to protect ourselves by using the same tools that they're using to harm us. Now, whether you decide to use those tools to attack them, I have no control over that. But you do have the ability to acquire brain-computer interface headsets, and I've shown you different companies that sell them, the different versions. I've even shown you the applications that go along with it, and that they combine it with AI so that they can keep tabs on all of us. And the script is the same, just the targets are different. So you can get your own BCI headset and record your experiences and what they're doing to you yourself, because you can see it all. Anything that's in your head and what they've done to you, you can record it and transfer it onto a computer and understand it visually, textually, auditorially, all of it. I have no problem with you saying that, Irene, because I feel your pain. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Once I have the ability, they're gonna regret ever fucking with people with it. So I'm just trying to give you the tools, because that's the tools. Like I said, I haven't been able to afford to purchase one myself because I only get so much money, and but when I do, I'm gonna learn everything I can about how to use it and what to do with it. I'm already doing that, but I'm gonna put it into practice. So, that being said, we're all in this together. Like Red Green says, have a good night and keep your stick on the ice.